So you're planning on running your first half marathon. Perhaps you've already run a 5K or a 10K in the past and you're looking for a new challenge. Well, in this video, I want to share 4 important elements that help me personally, and I believe will help you prepare for your first half marathon. Make sure you stick around until the end of this video. I am going to divulge the most important key. Now, just as a reminder, if you're new to this channel, I typically upload 1 video per week and talk about different topics relating to running. Especially if you're an older runner like me, I think that you'll be greatly helped by subscribing and smashing that notification bell so you'll know when my next video is released. So let's get started. Number 1, the importance of carving out enough time for your training. Now, 13.1 miles is quite a distance to run for your first time. However, unlike a marathon, it takes a lot less time to prepare. The training is not going to consume nearly as much of your time as a full marathon. Plus, you can recover from a half marathon much quicker than you would from a full marathon. Now, the thing to remember is that it is probably going to take 10 to 12 weeks of training to be ready to run a half marathon. Now, that's assuming that you have a decent amount of physical fitness already under your belt. And you should only consider running a half marathon if you can comfortably run 5 miles in one go already. Now, if you can't, that's fine, but you're going to have to figure that into the amount of time that you'll need to train. Now, it may take up to 16 weeks in that case, so just keep that in mind when you're choosing a particular race to enter. Number 2, consider setting a finishing goal. Perhaps you have in the past run a 10K or in a particular amount of time and you think, well, in the past if I've run a 10K in this amount of time, then I'll just double it and that'll be my half marathon finishing time. Well, it doesn't work like that. Now, according to several running statistics, the average half marathon finishing time for males is roughly 2 hours and 5 minutes, and the average finishing time for females is 2 hours and 23 minutes. Now, just for fun, the elite men can finish a half marathon in just under 1 hour. The elite women runners can finish a half marathon in just over 1 hour. So how do you figure out what your goal time should be? That has a lot to do with your current physical fitness level. Now, you may choose a beginner plan or an intermediate plan or a more advanced half marathon training plan. And those plans typically take into consideration your current level of fitness as well as your running experience. Whatever goal you decide to set for yourself, just don't forget to enjoy the process. Or as a certain person always says, keep the fun in the run. Thirdly, you need to plan on proper fueling and hydration. Now, since most of us will take more than 90 minutes to complete the half marathon, it will be very important to fuel up in the form of carbohydrates before the race as well as during the race, because your body can only go so far using its stored energy supplies. Now, for someone like me who eats a very low carb, high fat diet, my body is accustomed to using fat as its main fuel source. Therefore, it's not so vital for me to carb load prior to a race. However, if you have a different eating pattern than I do, it may do you well to increase your carbohydrates a few days before the race. And if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my video about eating smart. The key is not to go overboard. I remember several years ago going to the Olive Garden the night before I ran my first Marine Corps marathon, and I completely overdid it. It sure tasted good, but the next morning, man, I paid for it. So with too much food sitting in your stomach when you go to sleep, you may not sleep well, and you may have gut issues the next morning when it comes to the race. So when carb loading, it's more about replacing some of the regular food items on your menu with more carbohydrates, such as brown rice, pasta, potatoes. You may also want to find what type of carbohydrate supplements will sit best in your stomach prior to race day. Now, there are many forms of energy gels, sports drinks, jelly beans that will help you during the race, and it's extremely important to test them prior to the race during your training period. So typically you want to take about one gel 30 minutes prior to the start of a race, and then one gel about every 4 miles during the race. Also, start drinking plenty of water a few days prior to the half marathon so you're plenty hydrated. Now, the most important thing is to make sure that you don't allow your fuel tank to hit empty prior to crossing the finish line. And fourthly, you need to learn how to manage your mileage. Now, whichever training plan you choose to follow, it will include short runs as well as long runs, fast runs as well as slow runs, and it's important to mix it up a bit, which will help you keep the fun in the run. Your most important day is your long run. Typically this takes place on Saturday or Sunday. Now during these long runs, you should run at a pace that is comfortable enough that you could hold a conversation. Most of the training plans out there will have you increasing your mileage by about 10% every week until you arrive at your tapering period. Now, when training for a half marathon, the longest run you probably do is about 10 to 11 miles. And that should happen maybe 3 weeks before the race. Now, maybe you're wondering, why am I not running 13 miles during my training period? If I only run 10 miles, how will I be confident enough to know that I can go the distance? Well, your adrenaline and the crowd support and other racers around you, they're going to help you push all the way to the finish line. And so there's no need to really run 10 or 11 miles prior to the race. You'll also want to factor in a week or two of tapering down. During this time, you'll want to continue to go out the same amount of days per week and the same intensity. However, your distance will become less and less. But the whole purpose is to get you to the start line rested, injury-free, fresh legs, and ready to run your best race.
3, 2, 1.
Now, the most important element, the mental factor. So what do you do during the race when you are physically wore out, yet you still have a couple more miles to go? Well, this is when you need to build your mental muscle. Some runners come up with some type of mantra that they repeat over and over, either audibly or silently, to help push them when they feel like giving up. And this is usually something very positive and motivating, or perhaps it's a theme of Rocky. Whatever it is, the point is to help push you over the edge all the way to the finish line. Now in the past, when it's gotten really hard, I personally have set small goals as I run. Like, for example, if I can just make it to the top of that hill, I'll reward myself with some jelly beans. Or if I can make it to the intersection, I'll have a drink of Gatorade. And my purpose is to simply break up that 13.1 miles into small increments with the finish line as my ultimate goal. And don't forget that feeling of crossing the finish line and receiving your medal. It will be worth all the pain that you went through. And I can tell you from experience that there's no better feeling than accomplishing such a monumental goal as finishing a half marathon. So I want to encourage you to find a race, pick out a training plan, and enjoy the process. Now, if you've never run a half marathon, make sure to check out this video and get an idea of what it looks like on race day. And until then, I'll see you in the next video.